Chapter 8:34. Dugu Mabao frowned and retorted. Rong Xiu is Rong Xiu and she is her. I'm not venting my anger on her. I'm just urging her to cultivate. Don't forget, she doesn't have the Tianjing Yuan meridian anymore. If she wants to reach the same level of strength as before, she'll have to put in more than 10 times more effort than before. Lan Xiao and Diwu Zhangzi fell silent upon hearing this. How could they not know this? In fact, Dugu Mabao's statement was still a conservative one. The difference between the Tianjing Yuan meridian and the Daijing Yuan meridian was more than 10 times. It wasn't easy to start all over again. Although that's the case, don't you feel that there's something unusual in this girl's body? Diwu Zhangzi thought for a moment and couldn't help but ask softly. Haven't you thought about how she managed to subdue the 2 Tian baby? They didn't dig out the 2 Tian baby for her back then because they felt that the time wasn't right. One had to know that she was much stronger than she was now. But now, she managed to subdue that thing with the strength of a stage 5 warrior. It was truly inconceivable. Now that you mention it, it does seem to be true. Although her realm isn't high now, her strength isn't weak. She might even have a few powerful trump cards. Lan Xiao agreed. Something that can deal with the 2 Tian baby can't be ordinary. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, there might not be such a thing, right? In that case, although she doesn't have the Tianjing Yuan meridian, she seems to have some other benefits. Dugu Mabao said calmly. No matter what treasure she has, her strength can't be worse than before. Diwu, I'll leave those people to you. You must train them well. I don't want them to be burdens to this girl in the future. Diwu Zhangzi chuckled. Of course. I've already roughly checked the situation of those people just now. TSK, they're not bad at all. There's even a faint Yuan body among them. If you teach them well, they'll have a bright future. The friends that this girl likes are naturally good, Lan Xiao said lazily. Other than her bad taste in men, everything else is good. Oh, right, Big Bao, you still have to continue training. I agree with Rong Xiu, but I think little Snowflake is very pitiful, so let it go. When it was still young and ignorant when it contracted with Rong Xiu. Dugu Mabao snorted but didn't reply. Eventually, the Red Moon Desert. Chu Luiyue meditated beside the lake as her aura surged. Soon, the energy between heaven and earths. A vortex of a vortex directly above her head. Chu Luiyue shut her eyes tightly, and all the force in her body started circulating rapidly. Finally, Snow Sky Shi. Come to Ting. Big. Lin, at this point, all of Chu Luiyue's attention was focused. She could even clearly feel that the invisible barrier of a rank 6 warrior was within reach. She made up her mind and controlled the force to hit the water droplet in her dantian. Whoosh, like a wave crashing onto a reef, it surged violently. The 5 lines on the water droplet seemed to be affected and moved along with it. Chu Luiyue wasn't discouraged and tried again. Whoosh, the attack this time was stronger than before. The water droplet let out a buzzing sound. The lines on the water droplet fluctuated even more. The dark clouds in the sky gathered quickly and the sky darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. Silver snake-like bolts of lightning swam through the thick layers of clouds. This girl is just about to break through to a rank 6 warrior. Why is there such a big commotion? Lan Xiao, who was waiting leisurely, was shocked when he noticed the change. Ordinary cultivators would only trigger the heaven and earth phenomenon when they break through to the rank 7 warrior realm. Even the most outstanding Daijing Yuan meridian martial practitioners were rarely able to do this. If it was you or in the past, this wouldn't be strange. But the key was that she didn't have the Tianjing Yuan meridian now. There is indeed a problem with her Yuan meridian. Dugu Mabao suddenly spoke. What problem? Lan Xiao was confused. She does have the Daijing Yuan meridian now. They definitely wouldn't be wrong about this. I didn't say that she doesn't have the Daijing Yuan meridian now. What I meant was that her Yuan meridian is different from ordinary Daijing Yuan meridian cultivators. Dugu Mabao muttered to himself and lowered his voice. If I didn't guess wrongly, her Yuan meridian level has increased at least twice. What? This time, even Lan Xiao was so shocked that he couldn't say anything for a while. All the cultivators in the world had different talents from birth. The difference in the level of the Yuan meridian basically determined the level of talent. Of course, the level of the Yuan meridian could be changed, but the requirements were very high and it was extremely difficult. And usually, it could only be changed once. But DeBeo actually said that this girl's Yuan meridian level had increased at least twice? How is this possible? A cultivator's Yuan meridian can't withstand such torment. Of course it's impossible for ordinary people. But she's different. Maybe the Yuan meridian in her body might not be worse than the Tianjing Yuan meridian in the future. Lan Xiao seemed to have suddenly thought of something and took in a deep breath. You mean, Chu Luiyue didn't know about their reactions? She didn't dare to relax at all. After a short pause, she tried for the third time. This time, when the force hit the water droplet, Chu Luiyue heard a crisp cracking sound. Bang! The barrier of a rank 6 warrior was finally broken by her. Immediately, the surrounding heaven and earth energy started to flow into Chu Luiyue's limbs and bones at an even faster speed. Finally, it all flowed into the water droplet. The sixth pattern finally appeared slowly. When Chu Luiyue was about to break through to a rank 6 warrior, Mu Hongyu and the rest who came with her had already split up. Diwu Zhangzi purposely didn't let them stay together. After all, these people all had their own specialties, and it was best for them to train separately. The Red Moon Desert was vast and boundless, so they didn't have to worry about bumping into each other. As for Rong Xiu, Diwu Zhangzi was even less worried. Dugu Mabao was watching. However, in these few years, Rong Xiu's strength had increased rapidly, and now, even DeBeo had to put in more effort to deal with other people. I really don't know how he cultivates. Thus, in the Red Moon Desert, everyone split up and went through different tests. And in this process, their combat power also increased rapidly and silently. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 8:35. In the blink of an eye, a month's time had passed. There were only 5 days left before the wedding of 3rd Princess Shangguan Wan and Jianghu. Logically speaking, everyone should be in a jubilant mood on such an auspicious day. However, the atmosphere in Shilin City was inexplicably gloomy and oppressive. Even the usually bustling streets were much more deserted. This was all because of a series of strange things that had happened in Shilin City recently. Many disciples of various sects had recently disappeared for no apparent reason. Most importantly, they were all cultivation geniuses with Daijing Yuan meridians. At first, 3 people from the Soaring Cloud sect went missing. Although everyone was surprised, they only thought that they had offended someone they should not have offended, which led to such a disaster. In addition, after the 3rd princess sent the Black Cavalry to support them, the Soaring Cloud sect did not have such an incident again. Thus, everyone did not take this matter to heart. However, such peaceful days were soon disrupted. Because the same thing had also begun to happen in other sects. And the sects that had such incidents were basically those ranked in the upper echelons of Shilin City. There were a few outstanding geniuses, but they were not considered top-notch sections. For example, an existence like Dragon Teeth Mountain had been safe and sound. Instead, it was those sects that were about the same level as the Soaring Cloud sect that began to encounter accidents one after another. When the number of Daijing Yuan Meridian geniuses who went missing in Shilin City exceeded 5, everyone finally realized that the situation was much more serious than they had imagined. It was obvious that the other party was targeting such people. Although these sects had already strengthened their vigilance and searched everywhere for clues, they still did not find anything. Moreover, often after 1 or 2 people went missing, the other party would change to another sect to target. Their whereabouts were erratic and unpredictable. Just how powerful was this person to be able to do all this without anyone noticing? Just thinking about it sent chills down one's spine. For a time, almost everyone in Shilin City was in danger. No one knew if they would be the next. Especially those young cultivators with Daijing Yuan meridians, they were even more uneasy. Although they had outstanding talent, their current strength was still limited. They had not had the time to grow into a true powerhouse. How could they deal with all this? Although the 3rd princess had sent Mu Qinghe and the others to investigate the matter thoroughly, They had not found the culprit, and there was almost no progress. Therefore, even though Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing's wedding was approaching, the sky of Xiling City seemed to be shrouded in a layer of shadow. The Imperial Palace. Jiang Yuqing went straight all the way to Huayang Palace. His face was expressionless, and the aura around him was cold and gloomy. Many palace servants felt fear in their hearts and hurriedly saluted. Jiang Yuqing ignored these people and went straight to the main hall. Chan Yi was guarding the door. When she saw Jiang Yuqing arrive, she curtsied. "Greetings, young master." Jiang Yuqing asked coldly. "Where is His Highness now?" Chan Yi said. "His Highness came back to rest after the morning court. He's taking a nap now." Without another word, Jiang Yuqing lifted his foot and was about to go inside. Chan Yi immediately stepped forward and stopped him. Her tone was polite, but her expression was resolute. "Young master, His Highness has been busy with the wedding matters and also has to deal with various matters in the imperial court. He hasn't been able to rest properly. Now that she's finally fallen asleep, why don't you let her rest for a while? If there's anything, how about letting this servant pass on the message?" Jiang Yuqing sneered. "Is she really that tired? How come this young master doesn't know?" Yuan Wei and the people from the Ministry of Rites were handling the various trivial matters of the wedding. At most, she would say a few words and give her opinions. He was also handling the various matters in the imperial court. Shangguan Wan looked busy, but in reality, she did nothing. What was there to be tired about? Chan Yi frowned inwardly when she heard Jiang Yuqing's unpleasant tone. There were only a few days left until the wedding. Why did Jiang Yuqing suddenly come to find trouble with His Highness at this time? "Young master, it's really inconvenient for His Highness to see you right now. You should..." "Impudent!" Jiang Yuqing hollered angrily. "You're just a lowly servant, yet you dare to stop me time and time again? Chan Yi, you've been by the third princess's side for a long time, and you're highly regarded. Do you actually think that you're a master now?" Panic flashed across Chan Yi's face, and she immediately knelt down. "I don't dare. I'm just helping His Highness, Chan Yi." At this point, Shangguan Wan's voice suddenly sounded from the room. "Let Yuqing in." Chan Yi heaved a sigh of relief in her heart and hurriedly said, "Yes." Then she lowered her head. "I know my mistake. Young master, please." Jiang Yuqing narrowed his eyes, walked past her, and pushed the door open. "Chan Yi, go and receive your punishment yourself." "Yes." Chan Yi then stood up, carefully closed the door, and knelt down in the courtyard. When the other servants in Huayang Palace saw this scene, they didn't dare to go near and could only discuss it privately. "What's wrong with young master? Why is he so angry today? Who knows? But it's definitely not a small matter. When young master came in the past, when did he treat Chan Yi so rudely? On the surface, it looks like he's punishing Chan Yi, but he's actually slapping His Highness's face." "That's right. Who doesn't know that Chan Yi is His Highness's most trusted subordinate? There's only a few days left for her to fool around, so why did she suddenly cause such a scene?" "Shoo! Don't say anything else. Be careful of your words. Let's go. Disperse." The servants in Huayang Palace were all smart, and they knew what they could say and what they couldn't. Hence, Jiang Yuqing didn't even care if his previous actions would be spread out. Besides, he really couldn't tolerate it anymore. When he walked into the room, Shangguan Wan was sitting in front of the dressing table. After she came back, she originally planned to take off her mask, but who knew that she would hear Jiang Yuqing coming in? Thus, she could only put on her half-removed mask again. When Jiang Yuqing came in, he just happened to catch a glimpse of the ghastly wound on her cheek. It had already been so long, but the wound on Shangguan Wan's face hadn't improved in the slightest. In some places, it even festered from time to time, making it look extremely sinister. Jiang Yuqing couldn't help but frown. After a while, Shangguan Wan finished putting on the mask and turned her head to look at him. Her face was as bright and clean as before, no different from before. However, Jiang Yuqing knew what her true face looked like under that mask, so he actually felt even more awkward looking at it. However, Shangguan Wan didn't seem to notice. She frowned when she saw the anger that hadn't yet faded from Jiang Yuqing's face. She frowned a little and said tiredly, "What do you want to do by coming in so aggressively? Let me say something first. This consort is very tired right now and doesn't have the energy to deal with you. If there's nothing urgent, let's talk about it another day." Jiang Yuqing sneered. "Don't you know best why you're tired?" Sheng Guanwan paused. "I already warned you once before to stop before going too far. But what are you planning to do now? Are you crazy? You can get a better reading experience from the Love Network." Chapter 8:36. Sheng Guanwan's expression immediately turned cold. "This consort isn't crazy. This consort knows what she's doing. I don't need you to tell me what to do." She looked coldly at Jiang Yuqing. "Do you think that just because our wedding is imminent, you have the right to control everything about this consort? Jiang Yuqing, don't forget your status. No matter what, he was just a descendant of an aristocratic family. If it weren't for his engagement with her, how could he have everything he had today? After all, she was going to officially ascend the throne in a few days. When that time came, Jiang Yuqing would be even lower than her. He actually dared to be so arrogant in front of her? Jiang Yuqing was so angry that he laughed. It seemed that Sheng Guanwan had really been blinded by the status and power that had yet to come. Military power wasn't in her hands. Even if imperial power was in her hands, she was just a puppet. Besides, her foundation wasn't solid. It was hard to say if she could even hold onto this position. Without him, would she be where she was today? He originally didn't want to argue with her about this. After all, it wasn't the first time he knew that Sheng Guanwan was brainless. Back then, he'd chosen her because he saw that she was easy to control. But he didn't expect that she'd become so crazy now. Jiang Yuqing's gaze was cold. Enough people have gone missing in Xiling City. At this critical time, I don't want to hear this kind of news again, understand? However, in the face of Jiang Yuqing's repeated warnings, Sheng Guanwan didn't take them to heart at all. She sneered, turned around, and leisurely took off the exquisite dangling ornament on her head. "I knew you came for this matter, but there's really no need. It's just that a few disciples have gone missing. Up until now, no one has found any clues. In the future, no one will find out who did it. What are you worried about?" She didn't avoid Jiang Yuqing guessing that she was the one who did it. In any case, the two of them had done too many unspeakable things together, and they had each other's weaknesses. Unless Jiang Yuqing wanted to fight to the death, he had to stand on her side. Seeing that Sheng Guanwan was so fearless, Jiang Yuqing frowned and the anger in his chest burned even more. In order to recover her strength, Sheng Guanwan had indeed gone crazy. She didn't even care about how much of an impact it would have on them if something like this happened at this time. Right now, she only had herself in her mind. "Besides, I'm doing this for the sake of both of us. You don't want me to be unable to even pick up the scepter on our wedding day, do you?" Sheng Guanwan glanced at him. That was the symbol of the Tianling Emperor's status. If she failed in front of all the civil and military officials, then she would be completely finished. Even Jiang Yuqing was the same. He couldn't possibly find a third princess to marry. Jiang Yuqing clenched his teeth. In the end, he could only spit out one sentence: "Remember to wipe your mouth clean after eating." With that, he turned and strode away. Sheng Guanwan sneered disapprovingly, then turned her head to look at the mirror to do her makeup. In the depths of her eyes, a trace of blood gradually spread. It was cold and sinister, but it disappeared in an instant. After Jiang Yuqing left Huayang Hall, he had nowhere to vent his anger and wanted to directly leave the palace. But when he thought about how His Majesty had yet to wake up, he suppressed his anger and went to Qingfeng Hall. In the end, he happened to see Zhuo Mingxi walking out of his room. Jiang Yuqing felt that it was strange. Counting the days, it shouldn't be Zhuo Mingxi's turn to be on duty today, right? He walked forward. "Official Zhuo." Zhuo Mingxi looked up and saw that it was Jiang Yuqing. He froze for a moment, then bowed with a smile. "Eldest young master." Jiang Yuqing glanced at the tightly shut door and asked, "Shouldn't officials be resting at home today? Why did you come to the palace? Why isn't your attendant here?" Zhuo Mingxi was rarely alone. Zhuo Mingxi smiled and cupped his hands. I really shouldn't be here today, but I suddenly found a method in an ancient book the day before yesterday. I wanted to see if it would work on His Majesty, so I came to take a look. I hope eldest young master won't take offense. Jiang Yuqing nodded in understanding. Not at all. Official Zhuo is so dedicated to His Majesty, so you should be praised. How can you blame me? Has His Majesty's condition improved? Zhuo Mingxi paused. In fact, the poison in His Majesty's body has basically been cleared. It stands to reason that he should wake up in a few days, but what? Hearing that His Majesty might wake up, Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly lit up and he hurriedly asked. It's just that His Majesty seemed to have been stimulated by something before, and he doesn't seem to want to wake up. That's why there hasn't been any progress until now. If we can invite someone close to His Majesty to come and talk to him, maybe His Majesty can wake up. Jiang Yuqing's mind moved slightly. Then in officials' opinion, who is the most suitable person to invite? Zhuo Mingxi looked troubled. The people outside didn't know, but the people in the palace knew clearly. Qingfeng Hall was strictly guarded, and no one was allowed to come close. Even the young princes and young masters were not allowed to enter. Let alone the others? In the end, only third Princess Shangguan Wan was the most suitable person. How could Jiang Yuqing not think of this? He slightly restrained his expression. In other words, if the third princess is invited, then His Majesty is very likely to wake up? Zhuo Mingxi hurriedly lowered his head. Your wedding with Her Highness is imminent. I'm afraid that at this time, I will talk to her about this matter. Official Zhuo, you just need to help His Majesty recuperate. If His Majesty really wakes up, you have contributed greatly. Zhuo Mingxi repeatedly thanked him and said, Eldest young master, His Majesty's health has been fluctuating. The third princess has always been suspicious of the people taking care of His Majesty, including those two. So, what do you think about this matter? Don't worry, I know what to do. Before His Majesty wakes up, try not to let this matter spread. Jiang Yuqing said indifferently. Zhuo Mingxi breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. As long as His Majesty wakes up, we will be at ease. If there's nothing else, this humble subject will take his leave first. Jiang Yuqing nodded and let Zhuo Mingxi leave. After he left, Jiang Yuqing personally went into the room to check. Everything was similar to what Zhuo Mingxi said. He calculated in his heart for a while, and finally returned to Huayang Palace to tell Shangguan Wan about this matter. Shangguan Wan actually didn't take this matter to heart, but she had no choice but to agree perfunctorily after being urged by Jiang Yuqing. In any case, in her opinion, whether Imperial Father woke up or not didn't affect her much. Because no matter what, she would be the one standing at the top. Jiang Yuqing knew what Shangguan Wan was thinking. He wanted to say a few more words, but in the end he gave up. There were some things that didn't need to be told to her. As long as His Majesty wakes up, then the rest of the matter would naturally be solved easily. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 837. Undercurrents were surging in Xiling City, but the people in the Chongshu Pavilion did not seem to care at all. Because their thoughts were all on Chu Luiyue and the others. When the group returned from the Dahuang Swamp, none of the 3 senior brothers and junior sisters came back with them, which made them very worried. Even though Jian Fengqi quickly came over to explain the situation, she still couldn't help herself. But after so long, there were still no signs of them coming back. How could they not be worried? If not for the pavilion master staying on the mountain with a calm expression, they would have gone to the Dahuang Swamp to look for them. In an inconspicuous room on the mountain, Qi Dai was lying on the bed. Yu Qisong was beside him, taking his pulse. The 2 disciples stood at the side and watched. They seemed a little nervous, but also a little curious. After a while, Yu Qisong nodded and looked at the 2. Not bad. His body has taken a turn for the better. Although his Yuan meridian is mostly destroyed, his life is saved. Thanks to the 2 of you for taking care of him during this time. The 2 hurriedly said, It's all thanks to the pavilion master's prescription. We just did some small things. It's not worth mentioning. Yu Qisong smiled and shook his head. I know his body's condition very well. It was not easy for him to get through it. Thank you for your hard work." As he spoke, he took out 2 wooden boxes and handed them to each of them. "These are the prescriptions for refining 6th grade pills. Take them and study them well. Try to refine them as soon as possible." The 2 were shocked and looked at each other. One of them hurriedly said, "Pavilion Master, this is too valuable." They had only taken care of Chide for a while and did not do anything big. This reward was too generous. "Just take it." Seeing Yuchi-song insist, the 2 could only take it in surprise and joy. The other person could not help but ask, "Pavilion Master, is it worth it for you to go through so much trouble to save his life? His mind is not clear anymore. Even if he is saved, I'm afraid he will be seriously injured, unable to speak, and confused like a 3-year-old child." Why did the Pavilion Master value him so much? Yuchi-song glanced at Chide. "I have my own considerations." This person was very important. Jianghu had taken the initiative to deliver such a weakness to him. How could he not seize it? The remaining 2 disciples looked at each other, still puzzled. But since the Pavilion Master said so, it must be useful. After a moment of hesitation, one of them continued to ask, "Pavilion Master, little junior sister and the others haven't returned yet. What do you think?" Yuchi-song paused and shook his head gently. "Don't worry, they will return safely." Red Moon Desert. Under the scorching sun, a figure was running quickly in the boundless golden desert. A fist-sized ball of yellow sand was following closely behind her. "Stop chasing! Stop chasing!" Mu Hongyu shouted as she ran. In a moment of panic, her body instantly disappeared from the spot. A moment later, he appeared in another place. She hurriedly turned around to take a look, but there was nothing. However, just as she heaved a sigh of relief, she saw that not far away, a mass of yellow sand quickly condensed and pounced on her again. That lump of yellow sand directly hit her face. In an instant, Mu Hongyu's head and face were covered in sand. Dazed, she stood rooted to the ground. After a moment of daze, she started to scratch her head crazily and screamed hysterically, "Ah! Is there an end to this? Ever since I entered this Red Moon Desert for no reason, I was separated from the others. Then, this lump of yellow sand kept following me. At first, I didn't realize that something was amiss. After being attacked a few times and landing in a pathetic state, I then realized that this thing was targeting me. Just like what Qin Yi said previously, it was difficult for cultivators to walk in this desert. Every step consumed a lot of energy. Mu Hongyu relied on her faint yuan body and originally thought that it would be easier for her. In the end, she was pestered by this thing and started to run on a long road. During this period of time, no matter where she ran, she would always be greeted by a lump of yellow sand. Speaking of injuries, they weren't very serious. However, which girl could endure being covered in dust all day long? Mu Hongyu felt that she was going crazy. "I beg you, don't follow me anymore. I really don't know how I offended you. I really can't take it anymore." She was exhausted, and the force in her body was almost depleted. She really couldn't take it anymore. Then, she directly lay down on the ground. Ow! The moment she touched the ground, she was so scalded that she straightened up like a carp. "It's too hot. I actually forgot that this is the Red Moon Desert." Just as she was feeling miserable, she saw another lump of yellow sand gathering in front of her. The key was that it was twice as big as the previous one. Mu Hongyu cursed under her breath and resigned to her fate as she turned around and ran. That's right. If a faint yuan body can't even travel 50 kilometers, how can it be called a faint yuan body? In the dark, Diwu Zhangzi, who was controlling everything, couldn't help but mutter. According to the rumors, a person with a faint yuan body can travel thousands of kilometers in an instant. What does this count as? The others don't seem so noisy. Diwu Zhangzi looked at the others' situation. Needless to say, Qin Yi and Lei Laoxi's cultivation levels were much higher, and they could take a beating very well. As for that round-faced lady, her face was also flushed red as she crazily refined pills. As for that golden-haired young man, tisk, he can really endure it. With such a cold and evil aura in his body, it's really enviable when he cultivates. Even someone as picky as Di Wuzhangzi couldn't help but praise him. Sigh, I wonder how you are is now. Big Bao is training her personally. Thinking about Dugu Mabao's methods, Di Wuzhangzi's eyelids twitched harshly. These few people added together probably can't even compare to that girl's suffering. Dugu Mabao might dote on her, but he's really inhumane when it comes to training her. Achoo! In the center of the Red Moon Desert, beside the Sapphire Lake, Chu Liwei suddenly sneezed. She rubbed her nose. I wonder who's talking about me? However, I don't have the time and energy to think about this now. Faster! Faster! Dugu Mabao's cold voice sounded. Chu Liwei changed her palm into a fist and punched forward again. A figure flashed in front of her. The other party dodged again. At the same time, a leg kicked towards Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei clenched her teeth and turned her waist, narrowly avoiding the attack. However, one of her calves was still scraped a little, and instantly she felt a burning pain. She lowered her body and immediately squatted down, pouncing towards the other party like a fox. The other party grabbed her neck with one hand. Chu Liwei tilted her head to avoid it, then immediately clamped down on the other party's wrist with one hand and attacked. Bang! The two of them fell heavily on the ground. Lan Xiao came back after wandering around and was surprised by this scene. Big Bao, you don't seem to be using the peak of the 6th stage puppet from before? Dugu Mabao said coldly, this is the peak of the 7th stage. Digression, translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 8:38. Lan Zhao's mouth twitched. Peak of rank 7? She just broke through to rank 6 not long ago, and you're already so ruthless? Isn't it inappropriate? Lan Zhao's heart ached when he saw how badly injured she was. I only have one rank 6 puppet, and it was destroyed by her, so I can only change it to this. Dugu Mabao said without a change in his expression and heartbeat. Lan Xiao choked and was speechless. These puppets were refined by this fellow himself, and he could have any rank he wanted. What's there to say? It's just an excuse. Lan Xiao couldn't help but lament. It's rare to see you so shameless when she's around. How nostalgic. If you have nothing to do, I can help you find some entertainment. Dugu Mabao's voice was filled with murderous intent. Cough, I still have things to do, so I'll leave first. I'll leave her to you. Lan Xiao disappeared quickly after he finished speaking, as if he was afraid that Dugu Mabao would do something. What a joke. It was fine if he tortured you or alone, but he did it to raise her strength. Dugu Mabao knew what he was doing. But if it was him, Dugu Mabao would probably torture him to death. His body was extremely delicate, especially his face. He couldn't be hit. Lan Xiao left decisively, and Dugu Mabao was the only one left. His attention was naturally all on Chu Liwei. When she broke through to become a stage 6 warrior, Chu Liwei triggered the heaven and earth phenomenon, which surprised Dugu Mabao. Originally, after knowing that she had changed her body and had a Daijing Yuan meridian, he had already planned to train her according to the standard of a normal Daijing Yuan meridian cultivator. He didn't expect her to be so much more outstanding than they expected. Dugu Mabao had always had high hopes for her, so he simply gave up on his previous plan. He clenched his teeth and followed the previous training intensity. He first threw out a peak rank 6 puppet to test the waters and was shocked to find that her adaptability seemed to be stronger than before. Thus, when the lass was able to fight to a draw with the puppet at the peak of the 6th step, she immediately switched to the puppet at the peak of the 7th step. In fact, she didn't let him down. She grew rapidly in every battle. At first, she didn't even have the strength to fight back against this peak rank 7 puppet and could only be suppressed. But now, she could try her best to avoid the attacks and counterattack from time to time. Although her cultivation level wasn't high, her strength had already far exceeded what she appeared to be on the surface. At this point, Chu Liu's entire focus was on the puppet in front of her. The longer the two of them fought, the more intense the fight became and the more injuries she suffered. At this moment, there was not a single part of her body. But for some reason, the battle intent in her heart was getting stronger and stronger. Gradually, it was Duguimo Shi's. Sometimes, even she herself didn't know how she was able to execute her moves. It was like an instinct. She gradually realized. Inside her body, there was another her who had been sleeping. And now that her was slowly awakening. Swish. The puppet bent its arm and used its elbow to hit Chu Liyue's chest. Chu Liyue's body shook and a sweet taste of blood gushed into her mouth. Her gaze turned cold. Instead of retreating, she moved forward. At the same time, she clamped the puppet's arm and threw it forward. Bang! The puppet was fiercely thrown to the ground. Chu Liyue took advantage of the situation and directly stomped her foot on his back. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. Chu Liyue stomped a dent into the puppet's steel body. Chu Liyue spat out a mouthful of blood and roughly wiped the blood off her lips. She looked at the blue lake. She was in a daze for a moment. She vaguely heard her own voice. "Debeo, come again." Chu Liyue's speed of improvement was faster than Dugu Mabao had expected. Her body seemed to contain endless potential. The stronger the opponent, the stronger the potential. As long as she was given a certain amount of stimulation, she could quickly stimulate the energy in her body and become even stronger. Could this be related to the strange Yuan meridian in her body? Dugu Mabao thought to himself. Swish. The puppet under her feet disappeared. Another identical puppet appeared in front of her. This one is the same as the previous one. This time, as long as you can settle it within 15 minutes, you'll pass. If someone else was here, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. Chu Liyue, a beginner stage 6 stage, had to fight with a peak 7 stage. Not only did she have to win, she had to set a time limit of 15 minutes. That was simply crazy. However, Chu Liyue seemed to be used to it. She lightly nodded and agreed. These puppets were all meticulously refined. They were powerful and precise. Her advantage was that she could use her force to fight against her opponent. After all, puppets only had physical strength. However, there was one thing that she could not compare to the puppets. They did not know pain or fatigue. Chu Liyue had fought with them for so long. If not for the abundant force in her body, she would not have been able to hold on. Now, it was not easy for her to shorten the time to 15 minutes. If I can do it this time, can I make a request? Chu Liyue suddenly asked. What do you want? Dugu Mabao asked. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and said, I want to go back to Xiling first. Calculating the time, it was almost the 6th of June. She did not want to miss the wedding day of Shengguan Wan and Jianghu. Dugu Mabao agreed readily when he heard that. No problem. That was her territory. There was no problem if she wanted to go back. Chu Liyue was relieved. She looked at the puppet in front of her, and a cold light flashed across her eyes. Then she attacked first. Chu Liyue and the rest were in different parts of the Red Moon Desert. They were all training hard. There was only one person who could be considered to be relaxed. Rong Xiu. He did not need to ask to know that Dugu Mabao and the rest must have brought Chu Liyue to the center of the Red Moon Desert. There was only one lake in the desert, and it was also their biggest stronghold. Of course, it was her favorite place to stay in the past. He walked forward, wanting to go in that direction. However, Lan Xiao and the rest were not willing to let him go. They tried to stop him. Luckily, Rong Xiu's strength had increased greatly, and it was not difficult for him to deal with these. When he broke through Lan Xiao's checkpoint again, he finally succeeded in angering Lan Xiao. I'm not playing anymore. Anyway, is going back to Xiling. There's no point in doing this anymore. Sigh, she will definitely be busy with the Tianling dynasty when she goes back. I really don't know what's the point of being the empress. You should have told her to come with us. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, Oh, right, there's something I forgot to tell you seniors. Is no longer the empress. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 839. What did you say? Lan Zhao's voice was filled with shock. How can she not be the empress? Rong Xiu's expression didn't change, and his voice was clear. If you don't believe me, you can ask her yourself. Or you can ask anyone from the Tianling dynasty. Hearing that Rong Xiu didn't sound like he was joking, Lan Xiao also realized that something was amiss. There was no need to lie about this. Since Rong Xiu said this, it must be true. They were only happy that Yulan had returned and didn't ask her that much. What's going on? Is it because she doesn't have a Tianjing Yuan meridian? Back then, she was indeed given the title of Empress because of this. However, it didn't seem appropriate to remove her title just because of this, right? The Tianling dynasty must have accumulated 1,000 years of luck to have a genius like her. If they had a brain, they wouldn't do such a thing. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes and hid the murderous intent in them. His thick eyelashes cast a faint shadow under his eyelids, making the aura around him seem much colder. Because her Shangguan Yu identity is already dead. Big Bao! Big Bao! Dugu Mabao was watching Chu Luiyue fight with the puppet when he heard Lan Zhao's anxious voice. He frowned. What's wrong? Lan Xiao had always placed great importance on his image, including his voice. If nothing major happened, he definitely wouldn't sound like this. Nervous and angry. Dugu Mabao's heart skipped a beat. Lan Xiao hurried back with an extremely ugly expression on his face. Even when Yulan didn't come back for a few years, he didn't show such an expression. Lan Xiao closed his eyes and forced himself to calm down. Where's Fifth? Ask him to come back. Dugu Mabao didn't understand and frowned. What's wrong? What happened? Lan Xiao didn't answer directly and only urged. Ask him to come back first. I have something to say. Dugu Mabao could only call Diwu Zhangzi back. What are you doing? I'm teaching those kids well. Diwu Zhangzi was speaking when he saw the strange expressions on the two's faces, and his voice came to an abrupt halt. What was going on? The three of them had known each other for many years and understood each other very well. The current atmosphere was simply too rare. Something must have happened. Especially Lan Xiao, his face seemed to be covered in a layer of ice. This expression was normal on Dabao's face, but on him it was too strange. Dugu Mabao said, Now that everyone is here, can you tell me what's going on? Lan Xiao raised his chin and spoke to Diwu Zhangzi. Look after Dabao first. The two of them looked at each other blankly. What is going on? Do you know why you changed her body? The two of them frowned. They had always thought that it had something to do with her memory loss, so they had never asked. Lan Xiao took a deep breath and said word by word, This is because you died of sexual intercourse. Those bastards from the Tianling dynasty seized power and took advantage of Yu's amnesia to force her into a dead end. And now, she is indeed not Shangguan Yu, but Chu Luiyue. Previously, when she called herself Chu Luiyue, they didn't take it seriously and thought that she was just being cautious and didn't reveal her real name. Who knew that this was the situation? This news was simply too shocking, and Dugu Mabao and Diwu Zhangzi couldn't react for a moment. What are you talking about? Yu is exceptionally smart and powerful. In the Tianling dynasty, she is almost above everyone else. How could it be? Although the Dahuang swamp they were in was also part of the Tianling dynasty's territory, they had never taken the Tianling dynasty seriously. Because of this, they didn't pay much attention to the situation over there and knew nothing about these things. Moreover, in their eyes, only Yu could bully others. How could anyone frame her to death? Dugu Mabao suddenly asked, Say it again. Say it again. Who are the ones who harmed her? His face was expressionless and his tone was very calm. But Diwu Zhangzi and Lan Xiao felt a chill in their hearts. He was simply too scary like this. Big Bao, calm down first. Lan Xiao advised. I'm very calm. Dugu Mabao interrupted him. I'll ask you again. Who are the ones? Shi Ling. There were only 4 days left until Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing's wedding. This day was also the day that Xiahou Yushu would go to the Jiang residence to deliver the betrothal gifts. Originally, they didn't intend to do it so early. After all, no one wanted to clash with Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing's big day. But the Jiang residents took the initiative to ask them to deliver the betrothal gifts first. After the two's wedding was over, They would then work on Xiahou Yushu and Jiang Yuji's wedding. The Xiahou residents did as they were told. Xiahou Rong also came along. Logically speaking, he didn't need to come along. But he knew that Jiang Yuqing wanted the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill, so he could only bring it over personally. This way, on the one hand, it was for safety, and on the other hand, it could show the importance that the Xiahou residents placed on this marriage. Loads of betrothal gifts were sent to the Jiang residents. In the front hall, the two families were sitting together and chatting happily. After chatting for a while, Xiahou Rong mentioned that he had some matters to discuss with Jiang Yuqing in private. Everyone thought that the two of them were going to discuss matters of the imperial court, so they let them go to the study. After entering the room, Xiahou Rong took out the black wooden box and handed it over. "It's here. I hope eldest young master can abide by the previous agreement." Jiang Yuqing's lips curved up into a smile as he reached out to take the item. Of course, suddenly his expression changed. This thing has been touched by someone? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 840. Xiahou Rong was stunned. What? He hastily glanced at the wooden box made of black gas, frowned, and firmly denied. "This is impossible. I have been keeping this thing carefully, and no one has touched it." Jiang Yuqing's expression was cold, and his aura was chilling. "It's obvious that the seal has been tampered with. I gave this thing to you personally. Don't you think I know what it was like at that time?" Xiahou Rong choked. "What about the key?" Jiang Yuqing stretched out his hand. Xiahou Rong was also very unconvinced, so he threw the key over. His face didn't look good. "Young master, since I promised to return this thing to you, I will never break my promise. If you want to see it, just go ahead." At that time, Jiang Yuqing personally promised to give this 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill to him as a reward. But now, before he could use it, it was taken back. Xiahou Rong was quite dissatisfied with Jiang Yuqing for a long time. So he spoke very rudely at this time. Jiang Yuqing took the key, ignored him, and opened the black wooden box. The wooden box opened. It was empty. Jiang Yuqing's face darkened in an instant. He sneered and looked at Xiahou Rong. "Lord Xiahou, what do you say?" Xiahou Rong widened his eyes in shock, staring at the empty wooden box. "How is it possible? How is this possible? I have been keeping it well. How can it be gone?" Jiang Yuqing threw the black wooden box in front of Xiahou Rong, and it fell on the ground with a muffled sound. "Whether it's true or not, see for yourself." Xiahou Rong couldn't care less. He directly picked up the black wooden box on the ground and looked at it carefully. When he looked around and confirmed that there was indeed nothing inside, his face turned white with a schwa sound. Fine beads of sweat quickly seeped out of his forehead, and his lips trembled slightly. The black wooden box in his hand instantly became a hot potato. Xiahou Rong didn't know whether to take it or throw it away. The expression on his face kept changing, which was wonderful. Jiang Yuqing stared at him coldly, his eyes cold. After a while, Xiahou Rong seemed to have finally reacted and hurriedly raised his head. "I don't know. I really don't know." Ever since he obtained this item, he had been carefully keeping it. How could it suddenly disappear? The corners of Jiang Yuqing's mouth twitched without a smile. "So you're saying that the thing inside ran away on its own?" Xiahou Rong began to recall quickly as countless images flashed through his mind. No. Today, he had personally gone to the study to retrieve this item. There was nothing unusual about the whole process. There was no trace of it being touched at all. In other words, the other party must have taken it away without anyone noticing. Can do that. Wait a minute. Xiahou Rong's face suddenly changed. The number of people who were so clear about everything could be counted on one hand. Especially if you know how to find it and take it away. "It seems that Lord Xiahou already knows who did it?" said Jiang Yuqing calmly, his gaze filled with mockery. Xiahou Rong's lips moved, and he muttered in disbelief, "Impossible. Impossible. Impossible. I've always trusted Lord Xiahou's character. This time, I'll take it that you didn't guard it well." As long as you can find the person within a day and bring the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill back in one piece, this matter will come to an end. I'll treat it as if it never happened. How about that? Jianghu looked down, twirled the thumb ring in his hand, and slowly said, "As for the person who did this, I'll have to trouble you to deal with him as well, Lord Xiahou. After all, the fewer people who know about this, the better. I'm doing this for your reputation. Don't you think so?" He felt that he was already very benevolent by dealing with it this way. But to Xiahou Rong, this was undoubtedly an extremely difficult matter. This was because the person who did it was highly likely to be his second son, Xiahou Tingan. Xiahou Rong kept quiet for a while before swallowing his saliva with much difficulty. "If you find that person, can you spare his life, eldest young master?" Jianghu looked up slightly and glanced at him nonchalantly. Looking at Xiahou Rong's nervous face, he suddenly laughed. "It seems like I guessed correctly. It was indeed Xiahou Tingan who did it. I didn't expect him to be so daring to do such a thing." Xiahou Rong's hands trembled. "This matter hasn't come to a conclusion yet. Perhaps it's someone else, but you also know that he was chased out of the house by me some time ago. I'm afraid that his injuries haven't fully recovered yet." How could? His voice became softer and softer. To be honest, even he didn't believe it himself. To be able to successfully sneak into the Xiahou residence, pass through the barrier outside the study without a sound, enter, find the key, open the wooden box, and take the item away. Other than Xiahou Rong himself, only Xiahou Tingan can break through these layers of defense. Jianghu looked at Xiahou Rong as if he was looking at a joke. What a pitiful parent's heart. Lord Xiahou is pleading for him here and wants to protect him no matter what, but it's a pity that he doesn't care about you, his father. If he had any concerns about you and the entire Xiahou residence, he definitely wouldn't do such a thing. Jianghu words were like a knife that pierced into Xiahou Rong's heart. He closed his eyes, suppressed his emotions, and cupped his hands. "Eldest young master, don't worry. I'll definitely return the item perfectly. If it's really that unfilial son who did it, I hope that eldest young master can let him off this time on my account." Xiahou Rong had almost never begged anyone with such a humble tone. Even when he wanted to get the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill back then, he had a lot of discussions with Jianghu. This was the first time he begged like this. Jianghu paused for a long time before finally nodding. "Okay." After Xiahou Rong went out, he quickly left with Xiahou Yushu and the rest. Other than him and Jianghu, nobody knew what the two of them were talking about in the study. Almost everyone thought that everything related to the marriage was going smoothly, and they just had to wait for the wedding to be over. Then, the two aristocratic families could join forces. After returning to the residence, Xiahou Rong immediately ordered his men to bring Xiahou Tingan back. Everyone in the Xiahou residence was very shocked. They just fought for him not long ago, so why did they have to bring him back? But he's my biological son after all, and he's the one I doted on the most for so many years. It's normal that I can't bear to let him go. Very quickly, they sent back news that Xiahou Tingan had been staying with the lady from Chunfeng restaurant. When Xiahou Rong heard this, he was furious and immediately went over personally. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 841. When Xiahou Rong came, it was evening, and Xiahou Tingan was eating with Xiao Dai. As if it was because she came from Chunfeng restaurant, Xiao Dai wasn't good at cooking, and the food she cooked was hard to swallow. Xiahou Tingan was born a rich young master, so everything he ate and used was the best. How could he be used to such food? At the start, he could still bring Xiao Dai to restaurants outside, but as time passed, he didn't have much money on him. One had to know that when he left the Xiahou residence, he had very backbone and left without a single cent. The wealth in the cosmic ring that he gave Xiao Dai was all used to redeem Xiao Dai, so he didn't have much left. The two of them had been living a simple life for quite a few days. Xiahou Tingan originally felt uncomfortable, and with the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill being stolen, he had been very uneasy and fearful during this period of time. He had no energy in the day and couldn't sleep at night. Even if he occasionally fell asleep, he would have nightmares. After a period of torment, he had lost a lot of weight. Xiahou Tingan started to regret it. Even though this residence was clean and tidy, it couldn't be compared to the Xiahou residence. There was also no one to serve him. He was used to living a life of luxury. Experiencing the life of an ordinary person was even more unbearable than killing him. Actually, Xiahou Tingan had thought of going back to admit his mistake. But on the one hand, he couldn't bring himself to do so as he was afraid of being mocked by others. On the other hand, he was also worried that the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill would be exposed. Rather than that, he might as well live like this. However, this tranquility was quickly broken. Bang! The sound of the door being kicked was heard, and Xiahou Tingan and Xiao Dai were both shocked. The two of them looked at each other and heard Xiahou Rong's angry voice from outside. "Unfilial son! Come out now!" Xiahou Tingan's heart skipped a beat. They must have found out that I lost the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. He instantly stood up in a panic and instinctively wanted to escape. Xiao Dai looked at him in confusion. "Second young master, is the person outside Lord Xiahou? He seems to be here to find you. Just say that I'm not here." Xiahou Tingan hurriedly said and wanted to jump out of the window. But before he could move, his waist was entangled by a rope. Xiahou Rong pulled hard. Xiahou Tingan instantly fell backward. Bang! He fell heavily in front of Xiahou Rong. "Second young master." Seeing this scene, Xiao Dai shouted in a panic. She clutched the door tightly with both hands, looking very worried. Xiahou Rong glanced at her coldly. This young lady looked to be about 15 or 16 years old. She had a small face without any makeup and was delicate and pretty. She looked especially pitiful when she cried. She was indeed very different from Jianghu's arrogant and overbearing appearance. No wonder this unfilial son would do such a thing. "Scram!" Xiahou Rong bellowed. "From now on, don't let me see you in the West Hill." Xiao Dai's body shuddered, and tears streamed down her face as she looked at Xiahou Tingan with reluctance. I can leave, but please don't hurt second young master. It's all my fault." Xiahou Rong frowned and his aura became colder. Fear flashed across Xiao Dai's face as she hurriedly said goodbye to Xiahou Tingan and ran away crying. Only the father-son duo was left in the yard. Xiahou Rong directly dragged him into the room and looked down at him with a dignified expression. "Father!" Xiahou Tingan was slightly more awake at this point. Seeing this scene, he vaguely guessed something and shouted guiltily. "Don't call me!" Xiahou Rong rudely interrupted him. "Speak. Where's the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill?" Xiahou Tingan hurriedly said. "Father, I don't know. I really don't know." A loud slap sounded. Xiahou Rong harshly slapped Xiahou Tingan, causing him to fall to the ground. "Speak." Xiahou Tingan coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood. Even 2 of his teeth were knocked out. This showed how harsh Xiahou Rong was. I really don't know." Xiahou Tingan was also filled with grievances. "Apart from you, who else could steal something without anyone noticing?" Xiahou Rong gritted his teeth. "Did you find someone to help you?" Now that he thought about it, the item might have been lost on the night someone eavesdropped on him. The person who ran away might have purposely gone to lure the tiger away from the mountain to make it easier for this unfilial son to take action. Xiahou Tingan knew that the matter had been exposed, and he couldn't deny it. "But that item really isn't with me. Father, listen to my explanation. I did want to steal the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill that day, but someone snatched it away the moment I opened it. Until now, I still don't know where it is." Xiahou Tingan hurriedly recounted what happened that day. "If it's really in my hands, why aren't you using it now?" "Father, I'm speaking the truth." After hearing Xiahou Tingan's explanation, Xiahou Rong's heart gradually turned cold. If everything he said was true, then someone purposely followed him into the study that day and took the chance to steal the item. The most terrifying thing was that Xiahou Tingan didn't see what the other party looked like. He didn't have a single clue. If he wanted to find the person, wouldn't it be like finding a needle in a haystack? What Jianghu wanted was to send the item back perfectly within a day. Xiahou Rong's vision turned black, and he almost fell to the ground. "Father, Upon seeing this, Xiahou Tingan hurriedly went to help him up, but he was pushed away. Unfilial son. Do you know how big of a trouble you've caused this time? If Jiang Yuqing finds out that the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill is missing, our family won't be able to bear the consequences. Not to mention that I want to protect Xiahou Tingan, but if this matter gets out, I won't even be able to protect myself. The 9 clouds yuan recovery pill is the Tianling royal family's heirloom. If it lands in anyone's hands, it will become a huge hidden danger. The other party has obviously been eyeing us for a long time. They definitely want to make use of this 9 clouds yuan recovery pill. Suddenly, a white light flashed across Xiahou Rong's mind. Who in this world would be so stubborn about this item? To the point of spending so much effort to snatch it? You have to know that I took it from the princess 2 years ago. A ridiculous thought surfaced in his mind, and Xiahou Rong couldn't help but tremble. Upon seeing his reaction at the side, Xiahou Tingan's heart also hung up. It seems like this matter is even more serious than I thought. But at this point, Xiahou Tingan still thought that he was worried about Jiang Yuqing. Thus, his eyes turned and he had some thoughts. He inched closer, lowered his voice, and said, "Father, don't worry. Aren't you just worried about Jiang Yuqing? Actually, you don't have to think so much. Jiang Yuqing was also involved in the princess's incident back then, so he definitely can't escape. With this, he really won't dare to do anything to you." Xiahou Rong suddenly looked at him in shock and anger. What else do you know? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 842. Xiahou Tingan was shocked by his reaction and instinctively stepped back, but his collar had already been grabbed tightly. "Speak. You heard everything that day, didn't you?" asked Xiahou Rong harshly. "Father." Cough cough. Xiahou Tingan grabbed his hand and wanted to pry it away, but he started coughing uncomfortably. "Just hurt a little." Cough cough. However, Xiahou Rong didn't believe him. His face was unprecedentedly dark. Xiahou Tingan had never seen him with such an expression, and he couldn't help but swallow his remaining words. After a while, Xiahou Rong released his hand and stood up. "Come with me to the Jiang mansion. When you reach there, you just have to tell Jiang Yuqing what I said previously, but you can't let him know what you heard. Do you understand?" Xiahou Tingan nodded nervously. Xiahou Rong looked at him with deep eyes and sighed in his heart. It's obvious that there are still people in Xiling City who want to find out the truth behind the princess's death back then. These people might be in the imperial court, or they might be in the marketplace. Also, there was something that he couldn't help but worry about. Those people might have already returned. Red Moon Desert. After several attempts, Chu Luiyue finally managed to push the puppet in front of her to the ground within 15 minutes. Her body was almost covered in wounds, and there was even a trace of blood at the side of her lips. She looked very disheveled. After training here for a month, she felt that she had died a few times. Every time she felt that she could no longer continue, she would rely on the stubbornness at the bottom of her heart to forcefully endure it. However, her efforts weren't wasted. Other than her physical strength becoming stronger and her movement skills increasing, she had unexpectedly broken through to the intermediate stage 6 when she fought with this puppet. Previously, she had stayed in the heaven-wrecking Holy Seed's divine domain for a year and had accumulated a lot of origin power. In addition, during this period of time, she had been crazily fighting with these puppets. Her combat strength had constantly soared, so it was normal for her to advance. "Big baby, I won," said Chu Luiyue happily as she heaved a heavy sigh. Beside her, the peak 7th Order puppet had already been beaten to a pulp. However, no one responded to his words. The surroundings were quiet. Chu Luiyue stared blankly for a moment before taking a few steps closer to the lake. "Debeo." Only then did he hear Debeo's voice. "We all saw it. You did very well." After being here for a long time, Chu Luiyue became more familiar with them. For some reason, Debeo's tone sounded a little off. She blinked and asked tentatively, "Debao, why do you look so unhappy?" Actually, it couldn't be said that he was unhappy. Instead, it was more like he was suppressing some kind of anger. Although he seemed very calm when he spoke, for some reason, Chu Liwei had this feeling. Could it be that someone had provoked him? It's just a small matter. It doesn't matter. Dabao briefly skimmed over it and changed the topic. You said before that you wanted to go back to West Hill after winning, right? Chu Liwei nodded. Calculating the time, it should be too late to go back now. I'll send you back, Dabao said calmly. Chu Liwei was happy at first, but then she sensed that something was wrong. She frowned. Dabao, are you really okay? Dabao didn't answer. The yellow sand under Chu Liue's feet suddenly began to flow. The next moment, the scene in front of her changed. She composed herself and looked around. Only then did she realize that Dabao had sent her directly back to the intersection of the three realms. Then she saw a figure rushing over from the direction of the Red Moon Desert. Although he said that he had rushed over, he was actually sent out directly. Ouch, my waist. Mu Hongyu held her waist and grimaced in pain. However, halfway through her sentence, she saw Chu Liwei in front of her. Lu Yu? She immediately exclaimed. Then she ran directly towards Chu Liwei. Oh, it's really you? Great. She originally wanted to rush over and hug Chu Liwei, but when she reached Chu Liwei, she remembered that she was covered in dirt and stopped herself. Chu Liwei supported her arm. Mu Hongyu widened her eyes and saw that Chu Liwei seemed to be injured. She was about to speak with heartache when she realized that the pressure on her body seemed to be heavier than before. It seemed to be much stronger. Lu Yu, have you broken through to the intermediate 6th stage? Mu Hongyu was overjoyed. After seeing Chu Liwei nod with a smile, she immediately circled her several times in amazement. You're amazing. How long has it been, and you've risen 2 levels in a row? Let me tell you, bang. A voice suddenly fell beside the two of them. It was Yi Ranran. Ouch. She was still holding the medicine cauldron tightly, as if she was afraid that it would be broken. Chu Liwei glanced out of the corner of her eye and saw that the medicine cauldron was filled to the brim with elixirs. At a glance, there were all kinds of elixirs and their levels were not low. Chu Liue's eyelids twitched. Ranran. Mu Hongyu hurriedly helped her up. Yi Ranran was still in a daze. When she saw their faces, she was pleasantly surprised. Her round little face had lost a lot of weight, and her eyes were red. I finally found you. She didn't know why, but people kept forcing her to refine elixirs, and there were all kinds of rare herbs. She was exhausted, but she couldn't bear to stop. In the end, she was so tired. Then, Chang Wanzhou, Qin Yilei, and Old Four appeared one after another. Chu Liwei sharply realized that although they seemed to have gone through a lot of torture, everyone's strength was much stronger than before. It should be because of Dabao and the others, right? Chu Liue's heart warmed slightly. Let's talk when we get back. Let's go back to Xiling first. They didn't have any objections. Qini said, since we're also going back to Xiling, let's go together. Chu Liwei glanced at him and nodded lightly. Thus, they decided to go back together just like that. Mu Hongyu said, I remember that we still have to go through a few transportation arrays when we get back. Before he could finish his words, a blue barrier enveloped them all. Chu Liue's heart skipped a beat. This should be Dabao's doing. At this moment, Dabao's voice rang in her ears. Go back and do what you want to do. Even though his voice was as tender as a baby's, it sounded calm and steady to Chu Liue's ears, and it was filled with a calming power. Chu Liue's heart seemed to have an additional layer of confidence. She bowed in the direction of the Red Moon Desert and said seriously, Thank you, seniors. Then, the blue barrier flickered. Their figures instantly disappeared from where they were. Xiling. The streets were decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and there was a hubbub of voices. Because the third princess's wedding was in 3 days, it was also the day she ascended the throne. Thus, the entire Xiling celebration lasted for 10 days, from 3 days before the wedding to 7 days after the wedding. At the Jianghu residence, the lanterns were lit. Hearing the bustling sounds outside, Jiang Yucheng's heart skipped a beat. Let's go out for a walk. Digression. At 6 p.m., mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from AI Network. Chapter 843. The entire Jianghu residence had already been decorated and looked very jubilant. Jianghu walked to the door and stood with his hands behind his back. Even if he didn't have any expectations for this wedding, his heart still seemed to be touched by something when he saw this scene. The same scene had appeared here 2 years ago. For a moment, he almost thought that he had returned to that time. Eldest young master. Sun Qi walked forward and looked at him inquiringly. Do you have any orders? Jianghu came back to his senses and shook his head. Just walk around, no need to follow me. Sun Qi hurriedly responded. Jianghu walked forward. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he heard whispers coming from the side. Hey, how much do you think eldest young master will give this time? Will it be the same as last time? At that time, the lowest-ranking servant in our residence was given 100 white crystal coins, and the higher-ranking servants were even given 1,000 red envelopes. That's impossible. After all, that was his wedding with the Empress. Although the third princess has a noble status now, she's still a little lacking compared to the Empress. I think it's good enough to get 2/3. Hey, you guys are really optimistic. I don't think it's that good. Can't you see that our eldest young master's reaction this time is completely different from last time? The wedding is in 3 days, but I haven't seen eldest young master smile in this period of time. I'm guessing that this year, he probably didn't even smile by half. Pa. Don't say such depressing words. Eldest young master and the third princess wedding is a joyous occasion. You haven't even seen eldest young master once in a few days. How do you know that he hasn't smiled? If you guys don't know this, right? That day, Lord Yuan Wei from the Ministry of Rites brought people over to discuss the wedding with eldest young master. In the end, eldest young master directly let Lord Yuan take care of it himself. I remember that eldest young master even personally chose the tea set for the wedding last time. Although they lowered their voices, for a powerhouse like Jianghu, he could definitely hear it clearly. Sun Qi also heard it. He cursed in his heart and hurriedly went forward. Eldest young master, do you want this subordinate to teach those people a lesson? No need. Jianghu frowned. No one knew what he was thinking. After a moment he said, just give half of the rewards last time. Sun Qi quickly bowed. Jianghu didn't stay any longer. After saying this, he walked out. Sun Qi was dazed as he looked at Jianghu's back view and was momentarily confused. According to eldest young master's temperament, if he heard such words on a normal day, he would not let them off easily. Even Sun Qi didn't dare to casually mention this in front of Jianghu. He thought for a while but couldn't come up with anything, so he gave up. And after Jianghu walked out, he casually found a secluded corner and changed into a mask. When he walked out, he became another ordinary-looking young master. The streets were very lively. Although many sects were still shrouded in the shadow of their disciples' disappearance, for most people in Xiling City, this matter had nothing to do with them. The third princess wedding gave them a lot of benefits. They couldn't be more happy. Why would they care about anything else? Jianghu walked alone on the street. At this moment, no one recognized his identity. They all treated him as an ordinary person. They didn't even look at him. Jianghu walked aimlessly. The scene in front of him was so similar to 2 years ago. However, his mood was completely different. He remembered the discussion of the servants just now and laughed at himself. It was indeed different. At that time, he did his best to prepare everything and wanted everything to be perfect. But now, he didn't have the energy. Even listening to a few more words made him feel tired. If it weren't for those people reminding him, he would have even forgotten about the reward. But in fact, this was originally because he was happy in his heart that he took the initiative to do so. If it weren't for the fact that he was worried about Shangguanwan's face, he really wouldn't have bothered to do this. The people around him were all happy and lively. Only he was like an outsider who didn't fit in. Even if he was the one who was really going to get married, he didn't feel much until now. Jianghu walked to a restaurant, casually went up to the 2nd floor, and ordered some wine for himself. The wine was refreshing and burning as it went down his throat. What lingered in his mind was everything related to that person. Jianghu was a little irritated. He wanted to get rid of all these, so he drank one cup after another. However, the more he drank, the hotter the wine became, and the more he drank, the more sober he became. Scenes played out in his mind, becoming more and more vivid. Her laughter, her crying, her joy, her grief. He thought that as long as he did what he should do and became the best among these people, he would be her best choice. But he didn't expect that everything was just his wishful thinking. In the end, he found out that the person he thought was always high and mighty and that he could only look up to turned out to have eyes full of starlight because of someone. After that, everything that happened to her had nothing to do with him. Even the wedding that he had prepared with all his heart was nothing more than a dream. She was smiling, and her eyes were bright and clean. But soon she was engulfed by a ball of fire. In the end, only that pair of determined eyes were left. Jianghu suddenly woke up. He suddenly stood up. The chair fell to the ground with a muffled sound because of his violent movements. He shook his head fiercely and realized that he seemed to have drunk too much. He paid the bill and walked out. It was time to go back. A gentle breeze blew, and Jianghu immediately sobered up. The many emotions in his eyes gradually subsided like the tide and faded away. However, just as he turned to leave, he suddenly saw a familiar figure in the distance. He was suddenly stunned. It was a woman wearing a red dress, and her exquisite waist could be vaguely seen. Her hair was tied up in an exquisite bun, and her black hair was like clouds. There was only an extremely simple peach blossom hairpin in it. She stood there quietly with her head slightly tilted to the side, revealing her slender and fair neck, as well as the side of her beautiful face. The surrounding lights were brilliant, and the light reflected on her face. It was like the snow on a moonlit night, clean and pure, with a hint of coldness and nobility. Jianghu's heart suddenly beat faster. It's her. He almost couldn't control himself and quickly went forward, quickly passing through the crowd. There was only one person in his eyes and heart. The closer he got, the faster Jianghu's heart beat. He reached out and was about to hold the woman's hand. You, mobile user, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 844. The woman seemed to have sensed something and turned around. A beautiful face came into view. A trace of surprise flashed across her eyes. Then, her red lips curled into a smile. You are, Jianghu suddenly paused. Although the woman in front of him looked like her, she wasn't her. Her eyes and brows were similar, but there were some differences. That person's eyes were always gentle and cunning. However, the woman in front of him had a pair of clear, jade-like eyes that were faintly cold. It wasn't her, it wasn't her. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and glanced at his hand that was suspended in midair. She raised her eyebrows. Although he was wearing a mask, she could still recognize Jianghu's identity from his figure, footsteps, and voice. Could it be that Jianghu had mistaken her for Shangguanyu? She hadn't heard such a title in a long time. TSK, how disgusting. Why you here? Jianghu stiffly retracted his hand. His fingers curled, and his throat seemed to be blocked by something. It took him a lot of effort to ask this question. Seeing Jianghu's shocked and disappointed expression, Chu Luiyue blinked and the smile on her lips deepened. Hearing that voice that seemed to be filled with longing and joy, those who didn't know would really think that he was deeply in love with her. And he actually questioned her in such a way. How ridiculous! Could it be that Jianghu still hoped to see her in Shangguanyu again? Wasn't he the one who forced her into a dead end? What right did he have to talk to her like that? Chu Luiyue's mind raced, but she didn't show it on her face. She smiled faintly and said, Young master, you must have mistaken me for someone else. I came with my friends. They went in to buy things. I was waiting for them here. In fact, they had just returned to West Hill an hour ago. Originally, she wanted to rush back to the Chongshu Pavilion first, but Mu Hongyu said that they were too embarrassed now. If they went back like this, everyone would be very worried. No matter what, they had to wash up first. In fact, it wasn't just Mu Hongyu. The others, including Chu Luiyue, all looked very miserable. After all, they had stayed in the Red Moon Desert for so long. The sky was filled with yellow sand and the sun was scorching hot. Their bodies were almost stinking. Chu Luiyue also didn't want to go back with a bruised nose and swollen face. After some discussion, they found a temporary inn and cleaned themselves up. As Chu Luiyue still had a small bruise on her forehead, Yi Ranran simply applied a thin layer of powder and dressed her up a little. Chu Luiyue rarely dressed up. Seeing how insistent Yi Ranran was, she let her be. In the middle, she remembered that she hadn't worn the peach blossom hairpin Rong Xiu gave her properly, so she took it out and used it. Originally, she wanted to go back properly. She didn't expect to meet Jiang Yuqing while waiting for Mu Hongyu and the others to buy things. What bad luck. Chu Luiyue sighed silently in her heart. His good mood instantly vanished without a trace. At this moment, Jiang Yuqing finally recovered from his shock. Chu Luiyue. Didn't she already? He suddenly opened his eyes wide and looked at Chu Luiyue in disbelief. You're still alive? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and raised her chin slightly. She stared into Jiang Yuqing's eyes and smiled faintly. Young master, you must be joking. I'm standing here perfectly fine. Of course I'm alive. Jiang Yuqing was in a daze for a moment. This expression, this appearance, it really did seem like that person was talking. The alcohol came back to him again, and his head was a little swollen. He only looked at the woman in front of him and murmured in a low voice, "It's good that you're alive. It's good that I really..." At first, he felt relieved. Then, as if he remembered something, his expression suddenly changed. No, the strong smell of alcohol wafted over. Chu Luiyue calmly took a step back, but her eyes were still fixed on him. Jiang Yuqing's reaction was really strange. Lu Yu. At this moment, Mu Hongyu's clear voice came from the side. Chu Luiyue turned her head and saw Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran rushing over. The two of them were originally happy, but then they saw an unfamiliar young man standing next to them. The way he looked at Chu Luiyue was really strange. Mu Hongyu frowned and immediately walked forward. She pulled Chu Luiyue over and stood in front of Jiang Yuqing without batting an eyelid, blocking his line of sight. Lu Yu, who is this person? Mu Hongyu asked warily. Judging from the smell of alcohol on his body, could it be that he came over to hit on Lu Yu because she was pretty? At first glance, she could tell that he wasn't a good person. Chu Luiyue chuckled. I don't know him. He seems to have mistaken me for someone else. This finally made Jiang Yuqing sober up a little. He closed his eyes and only then did he remember that he was wearing another face. It was normal for them to be so vigilant. But fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, it would really be. He stared at Chu Luiyue and turned to leave. Hey, what's wrong with this person? Mu Hongyu frowned even more. He didn't even apologize for recognizing the wrong person? He doesn't look like an ordinary person. Why is he so uncultured? Chu Luiyue held her wrist and shook his head lightly. Forget it. What's the point of being calculative with this kind of person? Where's little Zhou and the rest? Yi Ranran whispered. Big Brother Qin and the others helped him. Big Brother Qin and the others said that they would help him clean up. They should be out soon, right? Chu Luiyue face-bombed. The few men took longer than us. I really have to take my hat off to them. Thinking about little Zhou's cold face, Chu Luiyue felt a slight headache. I'm afraid only Qin Yi and the rest can suppress him. Yi Ranran looked around and sighed. Xiling hasn't been this lively for 2 years. Last time, speaking of this, her expression darkened. Mu Hongyu was about to ask when she suddenly thought of something and fell silent. It should be related to that princess, right? What a pity. Mu Hongyu muttered. She originally admired that empress concubine a lot. Now that I finally came to Xiling, that person was no longer around. Chu Luiyue smiled faintly and said meaningfully, What's there to regret? We're in time for the third princess and eldest young Master Zhang's wedding this time. I'm sure it'll be very lively then. Digression. Faint from the heat. 38 degrees Celsius mobile user. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 845. The moment she said that, She heard a few familiar footsteps behind her. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw Qin Yi and Lei Laosi walking in front. "We're back!" Lei Laosi shouted excitedly at the few of them. Chang Wanzhou followed behind the two of them. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up, and her lips curled up into a smile. Chang Wanzhou had changed into a moon-white outfit with a white jade belt around his waist, which easily outlined the youth's tall and straight posture. His soft, short, golden hair glowed faintly under the illumination of the lantern light. A few strands of hair hung down, covering his excessively sharp brows and eyes, making the aura around him seem much gentler. His nose was straight, his lips were as red as roses, and his jade-like chin was rounder than before, but he still had a youthful vibe. In the past, Chang Wanzhou always wore his old and tattered hemp clothes. His skinny body swayed in an empty manner, and he was full of wildness, just like a wild beast crawling alone, lonely and unruly. Even after he entered the Chongshu Pavilion and followed beside Chu Luiyue, he always looked like a gray shadow. It was Chu Luiyue's first time seeing him like this, and she couldn't help but feel emotional. A good-looking person can indeed look stunning just by dressing up casually. At first glance, one would really think that he's a young master from some aristocratic family. Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran also sized up Chang Wanzhou in shock as if they had never seen him before. As if sensing their gazes, Chang Wanzhou's entire body stiffened, and he didn't know where to put his hands and feet. He quickly looked up at Chu Luiyue and saw that she was smiling at him, so he couldn't help but feel even more nervous. After a short moment of embarrassment, he turned around and planned to go back. "I'll go change back. I really feel uncomfortable wearing this outfit." "Hey!" Chu Luiyue pulled him back. Seeing his embarrassed expression, she couldn't help but laugh in her heart. But seeing that he was already so embarrassed, she naturally couldn't add fuel to the fire. She gently patted his shoulder and said seriously, "Xiao Zhou, you're doing great." Chang Wanzhou was stunned and looked at her suspiciously. "Really?" The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes seemed to be smiling. "Really?" In the past, he had always been alone. In order to survive, he had to compete with groups of wild beasts for all the resources that could be fought for. He had developed a wild nature. But things were different now. He had her and so many of them to accompany him. He would no longer be homeless and helpless like before. Looking at those black jade-like eyes, Chang Wanzhou's uneasiness gradually subsided. "Haha, I knew it would definitely please her, they would like it." Lei Laosi smiled proudly at the side. At first, this fellow refused to cooperate no matter what he said. It was only after Lei Laosi persuaded him and mentioned Her Highness that he was finally persuaded. This is what a normal young man looks like. He had long wanted to say that Chang Wanzhou's usual dirty and dusty appearance was really enough. Upon hearing that, Chang Wanzhou's fair face that seemed to be translucent instantly burned up. He turned his head away awkwardly, but the tips of his ears were already red. Chu Luiyue snickered in her heart. This child was like a hedgehog. He looked like he had thorns all over his body and wasn't easy to get close to, but his heart was actually very soft. Also, his skin was especially thin. A casual tease could easily make him blush. But she raised her brows slightly and glanced at Lei Laosi. Could it be that this person found Chang Wanzhou to replace him because he couldn't show his real face to others? After all, he was indeed an elegant young master back then. But now, he had to disguise himself as a burly man. Seeing that Chang Wanzhou was going to be cooked at this rate, Chu Luiyue finally spoke up out of kindness. "Since everyone's here, let's go. Shifu and the rest should be anxious from waiting." As Chu Luiyue spoke, she looked at Qin Yi and Lei Laosi. "Then we'll take our leave now." Qin Yi nodded lightly. "Since we're already at Xiling, we won't send you off. Laosi and I will stay at the previous inn. If you need any help, feel free to look for us." Chu Luiyue replied firmly. "Okay." After watching Chu Luiyue and the rest leave until they couldn't be seen, the smile on Lei Laosi's face gradually disappeared, and he glanced in a certain direction vigilantly. "Big brother, that man just now," Qin Yi smiled. "It's him." Lei Laosi's eyes were filled with anger. "Pooey. He's really shameless. Just now, we were quite far away, so we didn't see the situation clearly. We only vaguely saw a man talking to Her Highness for a while before leaving. However, we couldn't be more familiar with that person's aura. Even if he turned into ashes, we would still be able to recognize him clearly. Who knows what he said to Her Highness? Then, should we follow them and take a look? Lei Laosi lowered his voice and asked. Qin thought for a moment and shook his head. No need. Why? Lei Laosi was a little confused. Qin Yi's eyes flickered. Naturally, it's because someone's already doing it. What? Lei Laosi was a little confused, but he seemed to have recalled something. Could it be Old Seven? Previously, Her Highness mentioned that Qi Han came back with her. The two of them relied on a special yuan instrument to conceal their aura. Qi Han seemed to have used Little Hachi's medicine. Even though Old Seven is good at this, there seems to be someone who's better than him. A meaningful smile appeared on Qin Yi's face. I didn't expect there to be such a huge change after 2 years. Lei Laosi was still in a daze. Big brother, do you mean that someone else is secretly following Jianghu? But other than Old Seven, who else could it be? Let's go. Old Seven probably doesn't know that we're back. As Qin Yi spoke, he walked forward. Lei Laosi hurriedly followed. As he walked, he pondered in his heart. Could it be that other than us and Qi Han, there are other people from the 13U who have already returned to Xiling? As Jiang Yuqing walked on the streets, his mind was in a mess. The previous scene seemed to be replaying in front of his eyes. She's not her. He rubbed his glabella and wanted to shake everything off his mind. But for some reason, the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. On the bustling streets, there were many people walking to and fro. That girl in red stood there quietly, looked back, and smiled brightly. Chu Liyue's face. For some reason, Jiang Yuqing felt a little anxious. He staggered and actually almost fell to the ground. Eldest young master. Sun Qi, who had been following in the dark, hurriedly went forward but was pushed away by Jiang Yuqing. Eldest young master? Sun Qi said worriedly. The number of times eldest young master gets drunk can be counted with one hand. It's not even time yet, so why? Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes. Back home. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 846. Chongshu Pavilion. Yu Qisong had just taken Qide's pulse again. After this period of recuperation, although Qide's body had not completely recovered, his condition had stabilized. Only his mind was still not very clear. Most of the day he was in a daze. In addition, he was already mute, so he could not say anything. Everyone in the Chongshu Pavilion did not understand why the Pavilion Master kept this person. However, seeing that the Pavilion Master's attitude was firm, they did not ask further. They only did their duty and did what they had to do. Yu Qisong took out a pill and fed it to Qide. He lay on the bed and whimpered twice. A hint of struggle appeared in his eyes. Yu Qisong's heart skipped a beat. To have such a reaction meant that Qide had started to improve. If everything went smoothly. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and turned around to look outside the door. This aura, this fluctuation. Pavilion Master, what's wrong? The two disciples beside him were confused. Yu Qisong quickly got up and hurriedly said, "Take care of Qide." Then he hurriedly left. It was already nighttime. Most of the disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion had already gone back to rest. It was quiet all around. Yu Qisong quickly walked forward. Lu Xiao, who had just come out of the medicinal garden, happened to bump into Yu Qisong. Seeing the Pavilion Master in such a hurry, Lu Xiao felt strange. After bowing, he asked, "Pavilion Master, are you going down the mountain? It's already so late." Yu Qisong did not stop walking. He could not suppress the joy and excitement in his heart. "No, I'm going to pick up Lu Yu and the others." Lu Xiao was stunned. "Who needs you to personally?" Suddenly, his eyes widened and he cried out in shock. "You mean little junior sister and the others are back?" Yu Qisong could not help but smile. "That's right, it's them." Hearing this affirmative answer, Lu Xiao let out an excited howl and immediately followed. Me. I'll go too. Before he finished speaking, he had already rushed out and headed straight for the mountain gate. In the blink of an eye, he had already run in front of Yuchi Song. Yuchi Song looked at his back and could not help but shake his head and laugh. There were very few people in the Chongshu Pavilion. For convenience and safety, everyone lived close to each other. Therefore, Lu Xiao's shout immediately attracted the attention of many people. People walked out of the pavilion master, their faces blank. What were the pavilion master and Lu Xiao doing so late at night? A disciple asked. Pavilion master, this is junior sister. Little junior brother. Friend. It's really you? Lu Xiao's voice was very loud, and this shout was full of energy. It was difficult for everyone not to hear it even if they wanted to. After a short of song of course. What? Tiao of song of? Lu and the others. And the Avats. Did they really come back? Look! Amidst the chaos, someone suddenly shouted. Everyone looked over and saw a few figures walking up the stairs. The person in front was Lu Xiao, who was laughing so hard. The few behind him, Chu Luiwei, Chang Wanzhou, Yi Ranran, everyone was dumbfounded. Although the pavilion master had always said that they would return safely, everyone in the pavilion was actually very worried. After all, it was the Dahuang swamp. What a dangerous place! They waited day and night, their hearts filled with anxiety. They did not expect them to return so suddenly. Lu Xiao couldn't help but whistle and laugh proudly. Ha! What are you all waiting for? Hurry up and welcome junior sister and junior brother home. Only then did everyone come back to their senses. The shock on their faces gradually faded, leaving only joy and relief. Ran, junior sister, junior brother. Chu Luiwei and the others had just come up. Before they could greet everyone properly, they were immediately surrounded by their senior brothers and senior sisters. Ran, are you guys all right? Why you only back now? Are you injured? Are you injured? What's the situation in the Dahuang swamp? Junior sister, tell us quickly. Chu Luiwei felt a headache coming on. His passion was like fire. For a moment he really couldn't bear it. Yi Ranran was a soft person. When she saw such a scene, her small round face flushed red and she couldn't say a single word. Chang Wanzhou was even more so. The cold air on his body was constantly emitting, and it was simply freezing people to death. Unfortunately, everyone was too excited at this moment and no one noticed this. Because he had changed his outfit, the senior brothers and senior sisters could not help but praise him. Junior brother is so good-looking. It couldn't be helped. When people were too happy, it was indeed easy to ignore many things. Chang Wanzhou's face darkened even more, but his ears turned red again. The hand holding the sword was ready to move, but when he thought about how these people were actually happy that they had returned alive, he could not take a step forward. Thus, only Chu Luiwei was left who could barely hold the situation. Senior brothers and senior sisters, this is a long story. Let's go in and talk? Chu Luiwei was discussing with everyone. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Xiao waved his arm and shouted, Junior sister said to go in and talk in detail. Everyone heard his words clearly. After a moment of silence, the atmosphere became even more lively. Everyone clustered around the few of them as they walked inside. Quick, bring junior sister and the others back to sit down and talk. Pour tea. I'll serve tea. Hey, have you guys eaten yet? Do you want some snacks first? Aya, don't squeeze junior sister and the others. Make way. It wasn't that Chu Luiwei didn't expect them to be welcomed back, but she never expected it to be like this. Surrounded by the crowd, Chu Luiwei suddenly felt weak, pitiful, and helpless. She glanced at Yuchi Song, who was standing next to her. Master, please save your disciple. However, before Yuchi Song could answer, a group of people had already crowded around them and walked forward. Yuchi Song looked at the scene in front of him with a smile. He sighed inwardly and his eyes were slightly warm. Elder Xiai heard the commotion and rushed over. When he saw the noisy scene, he couldn't help but laugh. Our Chongshu Pavilion hasn't been so lively in a long time. In the past 2 years, the people of Chongshu Pavilion had either died, been injured, or left. Even they themselves felt a little miserable. They didn't expect to see such a lively day. Yuchi Song put his hands behind his back and sighed. That's right. This liveliness is all because of Chu Luiwei and the others. Elder Shui patted Yuchi Song on the shoulder. Let's go. Let's go celebrate the children's safe return. Yuchi Song also smiled. Let's go. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 847. That night, the Chongshu Pavilion was lively for once. Everyone was excited and joyful. They surrounded Chu Luiwei and the others and looked at them from head to toe. Thus, Chu Luiwei decided to tell him everything that had happened. Of course, most of the details were picked out. While she was trapped underground, Mu Hongyu and Yi Ran filled in the details of what had happened outside. Everyone was filled with emotion after listening to the story. Lu Xiao couldn't help but say, "Why are you so late? No wonder you guys came back so late. So you actually encountered so many things. What exactly is going on in the Red Moon Desert? You've all suffered a lot, haven't you?" Of course, Chu Luiwei didn't expose Debao and the others. She only said that she didn't know what was going on. Yi Ran refuted in a low voice. Actually, we didn't suffer much. Actually, we didn't suffer that much, and our strength has increased a lot. Although they were tired at the time, when they thought about it later, they realized that they had benefited the most from it. In that case, it was indeed a great opportunity. Da Huang Swamp is unpredictable. Although it's full of danger, there are indeed many opportunities. You've all gained a lot from this trip. It wasn't a wasted trip. Elder Xia Yi said happily. It was already a happy thing that these people could return safely, but he didn't expect that their cultivation had increased by different degrees. This was a pleasant surprise. Chu Luiwei, in particular, had become a 6th-stage warrior. Such a cultivation speed was heaven-defying. In comparison, the people who had returned earlier had basically returned empty-handed. Some of them had even suffered extremely serious injuries. Everyone thought that the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion had been wiped out this time, but who would have thought that they would be the ones who benefited the most in the end? If word of this got out, it would attract a lot of envy. The group chatted for a long time, wishing they could ask all the questions they could. When Chu Luiwei and the others were almost overwhelmed, Yuchi Song finally spoke up to help. Alright, it's too late today. They've just returned, so let them rest first. If there's anything, we can talk about it later. Since the pavilion master had spoken, although everyone was reluctant, they still got up and left. However, seeing how excited they were, they might not be able to sleep peacefully when they returned. Everyone left one after another. Even Mu Hongyu and the others also dispersed. Only Chu Luiwei and Yuchi Song were left in the room. Chu Luiwei understood that his master had something to ask him. Sure enough, after everyone left, Yuchi Song looked at her and asked, "You said earlier that you plucked the dancing lotus?" Chu Luiwei nodded. Yuchi Song frowned slightly, a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes. "Then have you ever met a tall man in black?" Chu Luiwei's heart stirred. Could he be asking about the first master? Seeing her reaction, Yuchi Song already knew what was going on. It seemed that Chu Luiwei had also met that man. But at that time, that man clearly said that the flower belonged to his wife. Why did he allow Chu Luiwei to pluck it? Didn't he stop you when you plucked the dancing lotus? Chu Luiwei blinked and asked curiously, "Why would he stop me?" In fact, it was the first master who urged her to pluck it. Seeing Yuchi Song's stunned face, Chu Luiwei thought for a moment and said, "Actually, I know that person." "You know him?" Yuchi Song was even more shocked. Luiwei actually knows such a strong and powerful person? Chu Luiwei nodded. For some reason, he helped me a lot. So, then do you know who he is? There was almost no such person in the Tianling dynasty. Chu Luiwei shook her head. His background is mysterious. I don't know more about him. Yuchi Song was a little disappointed. But seeing that Chu Luiyue really didn't seem to know, he didn't continue asking. Then, he suddenly thought of something and said, "Oh, right. By the way, the fact that you brought the dancing lotus back will probably be known by others very soon." As for the third princess, Chu Luiyue's lips curled up. "Master, are you worried that the third princess will ask me for the dancing lotus?" Although it sounded nice, in reality, according to Sheng Guanwan's personality, there was a high chance that she would directly snatch it. The noble third princess went around asking for medicine in order to improve His Majesty's health. It didn't sound wrong. Yuchi Song wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he nodded. The dancing lotus was such a precious treasure. Even the Tianling royal family didn't have it. It was obvious how precious it was. Anyone in the world who obtained it would probably treasure it. No one would be willing to let it be snatched away halfway. Moreover, Liu must have suffered a lot in De Huang Swamp. His heart really ached. However, Chu Luiyue didn't seem to be worried at all. She smiled faintly, and there seemed to be flowing light in her eyes. If she wants it, she can come and get it. The Chongshu Pavilion was overjoyed and bustling with noise and excitement. However, some people in Xiling City weren't so happy. Jiang Yuqing walked all the way back. The slightly cold night wind blew, and the corner of his clothes fluttered. He originally thought that this would sober him up, but he quickly realized that it didn't. This was because his mind was still replaying the scene just now. That woman was wearing a red dress, and her black hair was like the clouds. She was the only one who occupied his line of sight on the busy street. She looked back and smiled. She was beautiful, pure, and moving. Jiang Yuqing returned to his residence. He paused in the courtyard and walked towards the study. He entered the study alone, closed the door and windows, and then walked to the table and sat down. After a while, he finally took out a rectangular sandalwood box from under the table. With a click, the box opened. The picture scroll was lying quietly in the middle of it. Jiang Yuqing hesitated for a moment, but still took it out and slowly unfolded it. It was a woman in the painting. The woman stood by the lake, wearing a luxurious palace dress and a golden hairpin in her hair. She was dignified and noble. However, at this moment, she seemed to have heard something. She turned around with a bright smile on her face. That smile was different from her usual gentle and polite smile. It was sly and quick-witted, and her eyes were like stars. It was Sheng Guanyu. She looked like she was in her teens in the painting, and there was still a hint of youthfulness on her face. However, between her eyebrows, there was already a hint of absolute beauty. This was a scene from many years ago. In fact, even the real Sheng Guanyu didn't know that he had such a painting. He originally wanted to show it to her. Suddenly, a series of familiar footsteps came from outside. Jiang Yuqing frowned. "It's so late. What is Sheng Guanwan doing here?" Almost without thinking, he immediately rolled up the painting. The moment he put it in the box, someone directly pushed the door open and entered. "Yuqing!" Sheng Guanwan had just shouted when she saw Jiang Yuqing hiding something in a panic. She knitted her brows. "What are you hiding?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 848. It's nothing. Jiang Yuqing looked up, and his expression had already returned to normal. "Why did you come at this time?" Sheng Guanwan looked at him suspiciously. "I saw that it seemed to be a painting just now. What kind of painting would make him so wary?" There were almost no secrets between the two of us, and she had almost never seen Jiang Yuqing so nervous that he wanted to hide something. "It must be a masterpiece for you to take it out and admire it in the middle of the night. Why don't you take it out and let me take a look?" asked Sheng Guanwan as she took a step forward. However, Jiang Yuqing's expression was very nonchalant. "It's not a masterpiece. I just found it by accident. There's nothing to see." Sheng Guanwan couldn't maintain the smile on her face. "It's just a painting. It would be fine if he openly took it out for me to see, but he didn't. There must be something wrong with him for him to hide it from me." Sheng Guanwan glanced at the spot where Jiang Yuqing put the item back. Jiang Yuqing knitted his brows. As if sensing that Jiang Yuqing wasn't in a good mood, Sheng Guanwan quickly retracted her gaze. I didn't come here today to quarrel with him. Thinking of the purpose of this trip, Shang Wan's expression became much gentler. I came here secretly this time. Don't worry, no one will know. Everyone in this yard was Jiang Yuqing's confidant, so she wasn't worried that this matter would spread. She took a few steps forward. Actually, you drank? Shang Wan's expression changed slightly. Previously she was quite far away, so she didn't notice it. Now that she was standing closer, she then realized that Jiang Yuqing reeked of alcohol. Upon closer inspection, his eyes were slightly bloodshot, and there was a hint of blurriness in his eyes. He seemed to be a little drunk. Jiang Yuqing had always been very restrained. He would never drink excessively, and he wouldn't let himself get drunk. What was going on? Yuqing, what exactly happened to you? She asked as she reached for him. Jiang Yuqing calmly avoided her hand. I'm fine. If you have anything to say, just say it. Shang Wan's heart felt a little empty after her attack failed. She bit her lip. In fact, she had recently discovered that Jiang Yuqing was becoming more and more impatient and perfunctory towards her. However, although his attitude was distant as her fiancé, he had done everything that he should, so no one could find fault with him. This made Shang Wan even more aggrieved. She couldn't find a place to vent her anger. She gritted her teeth and suppressed the dissatisfaction and resentment in her heart. I came here today to ask you for the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. Jiang Yuqing frowned instantly. What did you say? Shang Wan was in a difficult position. I also know that I shouldn't do this, but I'm only one step away from recovering my Yuan meridian. There are only 3 days left until the wedding, so I can't do anything else. Even if I forcefully try, I'll at most have a low-grade Daijing Yuan meridian. You want to use the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill to raise your Yuan meridian level. Jiang Yuqing interrupted her. Shang Wan nodded. Originally, she didn't think of this. It was only after that person reminded her that she suddenly realized that even if she forcefully recovered her Daijing Yuan meridian, it would be very difficult for her to successfully raise the Tianling scepter. The most convenient thing was naturally the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. I know that you gave that item to Xiahou Rong previously, and he definitely won't be willing to return it. However, I can use other things to exchange for it. As long as the item is lost. Jiang Yuqing's voice was very cold. Shang Wan was suddenly stunned. What is lost? Jiang Yuqing enunciated every word clearly. The 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill has already been stolen by someone. Shang Wan naturally didn't believe him. However, looking at Jiang Yuqing's expression, it didn't seem like he was faking it. She was secretly angry. When can you get it back? Jiang Yuqing lowered his eyes. I don't know. Then what should I do? Shang Wan didn't have the patience to continue pretending. If I can't raise the Tianling scepter, that's your problem. Jiang Yuqing already smelled of alcohol, and his mind was in a mess, so his words weren't very polite. No matter what, you're the 3rd princess with the Tianling royal family's bloodline. This is something you should think about and solve yourself. He rubbed his brows in frustration. If it were Yu, she definitely wouldn't be troubled by such things. As soon as he finished speaking, the room instantly fell into dead silence. Shang Wan felt like she was struck by lightning. She widened her eyes in disbelief and stared at Jiang Yuqing. What did you just say? Jiang Yuqing also realized that his words were wrong, and his voice softened. I was just saying casually. Don't take it to heart. You still have her in your heart, don't you? Shang Wan suddenly grabbed his wrist, her eyes filled with deep resentment and jealousy. You also think that I'm inferior to her in every aspect, don't you? Jiang Yuqing controlled his temper. You're thinking too much. If it was really as you said, I wouldn't have done that back then. Thinking of the fire back then, Shang Wan gritted her teeth and shook off Jiang Yuqing's hand. Jiang Yuqing, you better remember what you promised me. With that, she turned around and left angrily. Jiang Yuqing stopped her again. Wait, I asked you to go to His Majesty's place to take a look. How's the situation? Shang Wan choked. Actually, she didn't take this matter to heart at all. She only went there once or twice and stayed there for a while before coming out. Jianghu warned. Don't you know how important His Majesty's sobriety is to us? Okay, I got it. I know what to do. Shengguan walked around him in annoyance and left quickly. After this commotion, Jianghu finally sobered up. He thought for a while, walked over, weighed the wooden box, and thought for a while. Actually, there's really no need to keep this thing. He acted like he wanted to burn it, but after going back and forth a few times, he couldn't bear to and could only put it back. Knock knock. Knocking sounds were suddenly heard. Eldest young master, Lord Xiahou is here. Xiahou Rong. Let him in. Jianghu sat down on the chair. Then, Xiahou Rong came in. He was wearing a black shirt, which completely covered his body. In the dark, if one didn't look closely, one wouldn't be able to recognize him. Behind him, there was a person who was wrapped up tightly. Xiahou Tingan. Jianghu leaned against the chair and looked at the two of them coldly. It seems like Lord Xiahou is here to return the item? Upon hearing this, Xiahou Rong was instantly embarrassed. He swallowed his saliva with much difficulty and immediately scolded Xiahou Tingan. Hurry and apologize to eldest young master. Xiahou Tingan knelt on the floor and seemed to be quite injured. Why, eldest young master, you don't have to say this. Jianghu didn't have much patience with him and went straight to the point. Return the item first. We'll talk about the rest later. Xiahou Rong's face turned pale. Eldest young master, that thing is gone. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 849. This is what happened. Now, we don't even know where that item is, so we can't find it even if we want to. Xiahou Rong fearfully recounted everything, and Xiahou Tingan kept kneeling on the floor, looking like he was admitting his mistake. It's all my fault for not teaching him well, which is why I allowed my unfilial son to do such a thing. He really deserves to die. But eldest young master, please spare his life on my account. Perhaps we can still identify that person. Xiahou Rong had never begged anyone so humbly before. Now, for Xiahou Tingan, he had completely thrown away his pride. Jianghu was enraged, and he almost laughed out of anger when he heard the last part. Officer Xiahou, do you know what you're saying? Xiahou Rong's voice suddenly stopped. Actually, he was also very perturbed in his heart. Not only did they lose a 9 clouds yuan recovery pill, but they might also attract a huge disaster. The other party's plan was so meticulous, and their actions were so decisive. They clearly came prepared. If they were exposed by someone, the consequences would be unimaginable. Xiahou Rong trembled and used his sleeves to wipe the sweat on his forehead. Actually, he didn't dare to tell Jianghu that someone might have heard what he said that day. If Jianghu knew about this, not only would he not be able to protect Xiahou Tingan, but even he might not be able to escape. Xiahou Rong argued. Eldest young master, I know that we're in the wrong, but apart from coming clean with you today, I also want to try to make up for our mistakes. Jianghu sneered and stared at him as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. Make up for our mistakes? Weiss, eldest young master. Think about it. How many people in the world can arrange such a meticulous plan and specially steal the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill? Jianghu's expression changed. You mean, eldest young master, those people have probably secretly returned. Shengguan returned to the palace in anger and threw a huge tantrum in Huayang Palace. She wasn't sure which of Jianghu's words were true and which were false. However, if Jianghu had made up his mind and did not intend to give her the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill, then no matter how much trouble she made, it would be useless. Therefore, after losing her temper, Shengguan decided to forcefully restore her yuan meridian after much consideration. If she still had some expectations and longing for Jianghu before, then his words today had completely shattered her fantasies. Regardless of whether he said it intentionally or not, Shengguan was already unforgivable. After thinking about it, she still felt that it was better to rely on herself than on anyone else. Thus, after a long period of consideration, she finally decided to forcefully restore her Yuan meridian. The next day, Chu Luiyue and the others personally sent Mu Hongyu back to Dragon Teeth Mountain. The news of their safe return from the great desolate swamp quickly spread throughout the entire Western Tomb. For a time, everyone was discussing with different reactions. There were those who rejoiced and there were those who were jealous. Previously, everyone thought that they were dead. Now that they had suddenly appeared, how could they not be curious? At the same time, another piece of news spread to everyone's ears. Chu Luiyue had not only successfully contracted a divine beast in the great desolate swamp, but he had also plucked a dancing lotus. No matter which one it would cause countless people to be envious, jealous, and hateful. One had to know that in the entire Tianling dynasty, apart from the Taizu of the past, no one else had contracted a divine beast. And that dancing lotus was a supreme-grade medicinal herb that only bloomed once every 500 years. Previously, the third princess had led 1,000 black cavalry troops and several sect disciples to the great desolate swamp for the blood of the divine beast and such treasures. In the end, not only did they not obtain anything, but they also suffered heavy casualties and returned in defeat. Now, compared to Chu Luiyue's situation, it was really too embarrassing. On the other side, Shangguan had finally completely restored her Yuan meridian on the day before her wedding after 2 days of bitter cultivation. However, just as she had expected, her Yuan meridian had just barely entered the level of the Daijing Yuan meridian. Compared to ordinary people, this might be considered not bad. However, for her status, it was far from enough. In Xiling City, there were many geniuses with the Daijing Yuan meridian, and she was not even ranked among them. This made Shangguan very unhappy, but there was nothing she could do at the moment. After all, it was already very difficult to successfully restore her Yuan meridian. Thinking of this, Shangguan secretly cursed in her heart. If Shangguan Yu hadn't destroyed her Yuan meridian back then, she wouldn't have fallen to such a state today. Thinking that tomorrow was the day of her wedding, Shangguan suppressed the resentment in her heart with great difficulty and planned to see if her father showed any signs of waking up. Shangguan brought Chani to Qingfeng Hall. However, on the way there, Shangguan realized that the atmosphere in the palace seemed a little off. She couldn't tell what the problem was, but she felt that the palace servants seemed to be looking at her differently than before, as if there was a deeper meaning behind their gazes. When she arrived outside Qingfeng Hall, just as she was about to step in, she heard whispers coming from inside. "Hey, have you guys heard? Chu Luiyue's back." This sentence was like a clap of thunder that exploded in Shangguan's mind. She was momentarily dazed. Chu Luiyue is back. How is this possible? Isn't she dead? When Chani heard this voice, she immediately wanted to go forward and reprimand her, but Shangguan pulled her back. The voices of the palace servants came one after another. Why haven't we heard? It's not just her. Even the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion are all fine. What does this mean? The important thing is, she contracted with a divine beast. That's a divine beast. I heard that she even brought back the dancing lotus, the treasure that Her Highness the Third Princess was injured because of. Originally, everyone said that Chu Luiyue was already dead, but who knew that Chu Luiyue's fortuitous opportunity was simply heaven-defying? Isn't this a slap to Her Highness the Third Princess's face? She brought so many people and put on such a big show, but in the end she didn't get anything. Instead, she couldn't even compare to a little girl who was fighting alone. If I were the third princess, I would be so ashamed that I would dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. Chapter 850. Chani's expression darkened as she glanced at Shangguan. "This servant will deal with these sluts right now." Shangguan raised her hand to stop her, then walked over. She turned around and stepped through the door, only to see the palace servants whispering to each other. "What are you talking about?" Shangguan asked darkly. This voice shocked the palace servants. When they saw that the person who came was Shangguan, their faces turned pale and they knelt down one after another. Your Highness, spare us. Your Highness, spare us." She must have heard what they said just now. You said that Chu Luiwei is back? Shangguan asked softly. Although his tone was calm, in the ears of the palace servants, it was extremely dangerous. No, we didn't. Slap. Chani stepped forward and gave the person who spoke a harsh slap to the face. Her Highness is asking you a question. Confess honestly. If you lie, I'll cut out your tongues. Chani had always been powerful, and everyone in the palace knew that she was vicious and merciless. They all feared her. Seeing her act up, they were even more worried. How could they dare to hide anything? Immediately, they told him everything they knew. The more Shangguan listened, the colder her expression became. Where did you hear all this from? Yes, the palace is already abuzz with the news. We only heard it by accident. Your Highness, please understand. The palace servants also felt that they had been wronged. Right now, it wasn't just the palace. Everyone in Xiling City was probably talking about this matter. Yet, they were the ones who were caught. If the third princess really wanted to punish them, how could she do it? Shangguan's eyelids twitched. How could she not understand what they were implying? This also meant that everyone already knew about Chu Luiwei's matters, but she knew nothing about it. She just happened to be in seclusion to repair her Yuan meridian. She didn't expect such a big thing to happen outside. Chani also realized that something was wrong and quickly apologized. Your Highness, it's all because of this servant's negligence. She had been guarding outside Huayang Hall all this time. She didn't even go out of the door. The people below were afraid of her. How could they take the initiative to tell her these things? Therefore, when everyone knew about this, Shangguan became the last person to know. Her expression changed a few times, then she turned around and left. Chani asked subconsciously. Your Highness, His Majesty, we've already arrived at Clear Wind Palace. Does His Highness not intend to go in and take a look? Shangguan smiled coldly. This consort has more important things to do. Go, invite Chu Luiwei into the palace. Just ask her to treat Imperial Father. With the divine beast and the dancing lotus, since that Chu Luiwei was so powerful, he naturally had to make good use of him. Xiling City. In a house on 6 Cloud Street, Chu Luiwei was sitting by the window, playing chess with himself. The white pieces were ferocious, but the black pieces had already quietly formed an encirclement. As long as he slashed down, he would be able to kill the white pieces. How boring! Chu Luiwei muttered to herself. Playing chess with herself wasn't very interesting. If Rong Xiu was here, at this moment, Chang Wanzhou walked in with ginger tea and replaced the old tea beside her that had already turned cold. Chu Luiwei stopped and threw the black pieces back into the jar. She looked up and smiled. Little Zhou, aren't you too familiar with doing this? You even know when to change the tea. It wasn't good if it was too hot or too cold. When she was focused on playing chess, she would often neglect the time. However, she could always drink tea that tasted just right. All of this was naturally because of Little Zhou. She didn't know how that person with Little Zhou had tortured him back then. Little Zhou lowered his eyes slightly, his long eyelashes fluttering. These are all small matters. If I can't even do this well, then I'm too useless. He had already done these things many times and was very familiar with them. He could even do it with his eyes closed. Knock knock. Knocking sounds suddenly came from outside. Chu Luiwei raised her brows slightly. Invite them in. Chang Wanzhou didn't ask anything and just nodded before turning to open the door. With a creak, the door opened. Qin Yi and Lei Laosi were standing outside. Qin Yi smiled lightly. It seems like we didn't find the wrong place. It's indeed here. Chang Wanzhou's eyes flickered, and he immediately took a step back to invite the two of them in. Please. Qin Yi nodded and walked in with Lei Laosi. Lei Laosi looked around and couldn't help but mutter, isn't this Elder Song's residence? It seems like it has already become Her Highness's residence? Qin Yi's lips curved up slightly, and something seemed to have flashed across his long and narrow eyes. Elder Song has always been a righteous person. Her Highness used to like coming to this place a lot. I heard that Yuqi Song sold a lot of things when he was in trouble, but he didn't touch this residence in the end. After going through so much trouble, it finally became Her Highness's. It's considered fate. Chang Wanzhou followed behind the two of them and frowned slightly. In the 2 days since they returned to Xiling, Chu Luiwei basically spent the rest of her time here other than the first night at Chongshu Pavilion. Over here, she basically played chess and read books, looking very relaxed as if she didn't know that the people outside were talking about her. In just one night, such shocking news spread throughout the entire Xiling. No one would believe that there wasn't a mastermind behind it. However, very few people knew that the mastermind was actually Chu Luiwei herself. Today, Qin Yi and Lei Laosi even directly came to visit her. Logically speaking, it should be their first time here, but they looked very familiar with this place. The two of them clearly knew where to go and what to put there, so they didn't need Chang Wanzhou to lead the way. Chang Wanzhou pressed his lips against each other. Previously, he had already vaguely sensed that the two of them should have known Chu Luiwei for a long time. In fact, the two of them had always been very respectful to her. Normal people might not be able to tell, but Chang Wanzhou was extremely sensitive in this aspect, so he could see it very clearly. No matter if it was Qin Yi or Lei Laosi, they were both very strong. Chu Luiwei was much weaker than them, so logically speaking, they shouldn't have such an attitude toward Chu Luiwei. Not to mention, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant that they spent so much effort to guard had formed an agreement with Chu Luiwei after it broke through. All of this pointed to a shocking answer. Chang Wanzhou knew that there must be a huge secret behind it. The few of them walked in and quickly reached the front hall where Chu Luiwei was. Upon hearing the commotion, Chu Luiwei looked up and smiled at the two of them. "You guys came at the right time. I was just about to look for you guys." Qin Yi glanced at the half-finished chessboard on the table and smiled. Her Highness really likes to joke like before. She's clearly waiting for us to come. Chu Luiwei's lips curled up slightly as she looked at Chang Wanzhou, who was about to go out. "Little Zhou, come in and talk too." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios, mobile users, please browse and read. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.